Have you ever thought love is all I need in a relationship? Because I did, and no one taught me the truth that love is what actually gets you started in your relationship, but it doesn't carry you through. Especially in intercultural relationships, love is just the beginning of a much more complicated and sometimes messy and adventurous journey. The reality of building a life together across cultures, languages, and families can be quite tricky and sometimes feel far away from rewarding. But before we start into today's episode, hi, my name is Tina, and I fell in love with my nowadays Argentinian husband 10 years ago while being on solo vacation in Miami. I'm from Germany, and we matched on Tinder. On my last day in Miami, my last full day, we were able to meet each other in person, and I remember sitting in the car because I had a rental back then, and I picked him up, waiting in front of his apartment complex and just getting all nervous, sweaty palms, and feeling like I'm not really capable of speaking any language anymore. So my head was just like all over the place. And I remember this moment quite vividly. The moment my nowadays husband, so Nacho, got into the car, the only thing I saw were his big blue eyes, which are quite rare for Argentinians or for Latin Americans in general. And he just had this, I don't know, this energy that was quite catchy. And I like to think back to that moment quite often because it made me feel very special. Have you ever thought love is all I need in my relationship? Because I did. And the truth is hard. And no one told me the truth. Because after all, love gets you started, but it doesn't carry you through. Especially in intercultural relationships, love is just the beginning of much. Let's do it again. Have you ever thought love is all I need in a relationship? Because I did, and no one taught me the truth that love is what actually gets you started in your relationship, but it doesn't carry you through. Especially in intercultural relationships, love is just the beginning of a much more complicated and sometimes messy and adventurous journey. The reality of building a life together across cultures, languages, and families can be quite tricky and sometimes feel far away from rewarding. But before we start into today's episode, hi, my name is Tina, and I fell in love with my nowadays Argentinian husband 10 years ago while being on solo vacation in Miami. I'm from Germany, and we matched on Tinder. On my last day in Miami, my last full day, we were able to meet each other in person, and I remember sitting in the car because I had a rental back then, and I picked him up, waiting in front of his apartment complex and just getting all nervous, sweaty palms, and feeling like I'm not really capable of speaking any language anymore. So my head was just like all over the place. And I remember this moment quite vividly. The moment my nowadays husband, so Nacho, got into the car, the only thing I saw were his big blue eyes, which are quite rare for Argentinians or for Latin Americans in general, and his huge smile. And he just had this, I don't know, this energy that was quite catchy. And I like to think back to that moment quite often because it made me feel very special, even though if we barely knew each other. We were just texting for 3 days until we made it happen on my last day in Miami while I was on vacation and he was living there. So for me, it was love at first sight. I've never experienced something like this before, and I had those butterflies in my stomach, and I really wanted to make it work despite knowing that eventually I will fly back home and yeah, we might not see each other for a while. But we stayed in contact. We started off as a long distance friendship and then long distance relationship. We're able to see each other 3 times in person. I met his family and he met my family. I was able to introduce him to my country and the other way around. But there is the part no one really tells you. The real challenges don't start when you fall in love. They begin when you try to build a shared life. That's when tiny little cracks started to show in our relationship as well. I did realize those the moment I moved to Miami. So I uprooted my whole life I had in Germany, moved to Miami in order to be with them, to close the distance. And this is when those cracks, as mentioned, showed. And this is when I had the feeling that love is not enough. We really have to work on this relationship. It took us a lot of patience, a lot of learning from one another, a lot of understanding to get to the point where we're nowadays. Nowadays, we are communicating quite openly. There is no topic we're afraid of tackling, but it took 10 years. This is why today I want to talk about the 5 biggest truths that I have learned, not only just from my life and my experience, but from conversations with over 60 intercultural couples. These are truths that can make or break your relationship. And if you are in one right now, if you're planning to get in one or if you're about to get in one, this might be helpful. So listen closely. Let's start with the thing most couples don't really talk about until it's almost too late. Culture and values. So your culture shapes how you argue, how you express love, even how you show up to dinner. So it goes from tiny little itsy bitsy things to the way you act, to the way you show up, and to the way you communicate. Research shows that value clashes and the cultural background you're bringing into your relationship are often number one predictor of long-term conflicts in intercultural relationships. This is why, and I can't state that often enough, it's so important that you tackle heavy topics in your relationship. I know, especially if you're wearing those rose-colored glasses, it can be difficult to tackle a topic that's heavy on you, a topic where you know that might cause conflict or where you know it will take some time to walk through this together, but I highly encourage you to do so. This is why you will find a link to a template, to a communication template in the description as well as in the side notes, in case you're listening to this episode on Spotify or anywhere else below. Also, I did a similar video on communication, which you will find here. So if you're watching on YouTube, just click the info box. If you're listening on podcast platform, just click the second link below. Examples, what to talk about right early in your relationships are family, home, and success. Especially, what does this mean to you? Where do you prioritize it? That doesn't mean that you will meet exactly in the middle. In my opinion, it's not possible to meet exactly in the middle because sometimes you might have values that are more important to you, that are important to your partner. So you will always just go a little bit left or further to the right. And this is something you should tackle on a regular basis, even though we are 10 years together already, married, we've built a life together, we've moved a couple of times to different countries. We still sit down once a week and we talk about our week. We talk about what went fine. We talk about what's going through our minds. We talk about like little things, but also bigger decisions, especially when it comes to the next steps in our lives, given that we're also having 2 families spreading onto different countries. And sometimes it's just heavy. I miss my home country. I miss my family, especially that is back in Germany. And sometimes I have good days and sometimes I have bad days. And it's just so important to, no matter what's going through your mind, no matter how you're feeling, you should always be assured that this topic is something you can address with your partner. Again, please use the template below. Please make a regular check-in out of it. Can be like a cute dating scenario. It doesn't really have to be like, oh, you just sit down with your pen and you just note it down and boring. So I highly encourage you to take that topic super, super serious and to make sure that you are on the same page at the moment, but also when it comes to your future. Obviously, culture is not the only hidden, in that case, honestly obvious tension. Here is what surprised me even more. Unspoken family expectations. Yep, that's a big one. Families often silently expect you to return, to raise kids a certain way, or to uphold your cultural traditions. That invisible pressure can steer your decision without you even realizing it. But if you do, say it out loud, address it, share what your family might expect. Be honest within your relationship and protect your shared vision over assumed obligations. I hear it so often, especially within the community of women who are dating someone from a different country, that they feel like their family is expecting to move back home or to move closer, to raise kids closer to home. For example, there was a period where both of our parents expected us to move back to our home country. And in the end, obviously, it's a decision Nacho and I are up to make. Same as you are living your life with your partner and you're making decisions that are best for you in best case. But in our situation, it's a little bit tricky because my suegra, so my mother-in-law, she's a little bit older. And that's the reason why we are in Buenos Aires in Argentina at the moment. I'm going to get a little bit personal here, which I usually don't do in my episodes. It's just that this is something we've been talking about beforehand. So I knew eventually there will be the time where we have to move to Argentina, where we have to show up for his family, where we have to be present in person because of the age of my mother-in-law. So I was prepared for it. We've been talking about it. It also has been something that came up in conversations with my husband's family, and we were quite transparent about it. And we knew that eventually if my sister-in-law will communicate towards us like, hey, I need you here, I need your help, I can't do it by myself anymore, that we do have to pack our things and move to Argentina, which is now the case. And the other way around, we also agreed that for a couple of years, which we also did, we will move to Germany. So Nacho understands my cultural upbringing as well. And that way, my family especially was also able to get to know my husband better. We took the illusion due to, or thanks to open conversations, that eventually we will settle in Germany. So I had so many conversations with my mom, which I'm super grateful for, that we're able to have open conversations where I told her openly like this, and this is our plan. This is what we said. This is what we feel comfortable with. I don't think I will move back to Germany after this. So after Argentina, I don't know what's going to be next. The future will tell. I know for sure if you're dating someone from a different country, you know exactly how that feels like. You can't really plan ahead. But to get back to the point, I crashed her illusion a little bit, but I was only able to do so because we actually communicated it beforehand. So we set a goal, we made a plan, and then I communicated it towards my family in person in that case, that we will not move back to Germany on the long run. Obviously, if something comes up, obviously, if someone needs help, it's just, yes, it's 24 hours until I'm in front of their doorstep, but there's still a way to get there in an emergency. So we made peace with it. Very honest, very open. It took a while, took so many conversations, and I made sure Nacho did the same throughout the whole process, throughout everything we're doing, that we do have this open conversation with our families as well. So after making a big decision, after discussing the next steps, we made sure to include our families. And there are ways to do it. And I understand that it really depends on the culture as well. I know it can be especially tricky if religion plays a role, for example. But my experience, again, also the experiences of other couples I've interviewed, has shown that it's always best to be very direct and very upfront with how you're feeling and what your next steps are. So yeah, this is where we're at right now. Again, a little longer side note. Communicate not only within your relationship, but communicate with your loved ones as well, and try to make them understand that you are between two different worlds and that you have two homes, for example. Once you do that, you will feel such a relief, and it will be easier to tackle those topics in the future with your family, believe me. And let's keep on with point number 3. Sneaks in quietly as well. Language barrier. I'm sure you can relate to this topic as well. And as you might hear, if you don't know me yet, I do have quite an accent. My English is not perfect because I'm German. I've learned English in school. Nacho and I are communicating in English, but it's none of our mother tongues. This can cause funny misunderstandings. Like, for example, the first time we saw each other, actually he asked to kiss me, and I didn't understand. I had no clue what he was saying because back then he also had this thick Argentinian accent when speaking English. And I asked him 3 times if he could please repeat what he was just saying. Funny thing, I still like to think about it nowadays, but there are also situations, especially in arguments, where the language barrier is not a big help. So I like to think that because I do translate everything beforehand, so I still go from German to English. So there's some translation time or more time in between for me to just spit out things in an argument, that this is also kind of a natural filter because I might not say everything I'm just thinking in that moment. Because again, I have more time to think about it. That makes sense. But in an argument, it still shows that English is not our native language. Oftentimes it just happens that I'm just standing there and just like, if you would know, and everyone who loves Modern Family as much as I do knows this slogan or this quote, if you would know how smart I am in my own mother tongue, we wouldn't have this argument. But this is how it is, we've kind of over the time just developed our own way of communicating in a language that's not our mother tongue, which has its flaws, which is interesting as well. And over time, because I'm learning Spanish, Nacho speaks German as well, we kind of created our own language, which is a topic for another day. But to get back to the topic, in an argument, when not speaking your mother tongue, obviously you're expressing yourself differently than you would normally do. And because of a language barrier, you might not always understand what your partner is communicating or what your partner is trying to say. And things just might come off much harder than they intend to. There's something called code switching, which I would like to make another episode about. It happens to me in German, in English, in Spanish. Now that I'm quite controversial with my Spanish, that depending on which language I'm speaking, I'm also a different person. For example, English right now, I kind of talk a little bit with my hands, which I usually don't do when speaking Spanish. And that's also a way of communication. It's not only the words, it's also the gesture, it's the facial expression. So when speaking English, I jump into a different role, and it's the same for Nacho, and that can lead to a lot of confusion. So if you are in an argument and you realize, okay, there might be a slight language barrier, I don't really understand what the other person is trying to tell me, pause, create a safe word, but try to step back out of the situation and try to find words to phrase the question that will dissolve the situation, or that will get you closer to understand what your partner is really trying to say. What helps, and that comes over time as well, is to learn emotional vocabulary in both languages. Believe me, those are survival instincts. You're just creating your own way of communication in general, but also your own way of resolving conflicts. But what hit me even hardest was feeling like I'm losing my identity. This, for me, especially was the case when I moved to my partner's country. So I'm in Argentina right now. I feel very much at home here. I don't want to move anywhere else. I feel super, super comfortable. I've built my network, so all good. But if you move to your partner's country, you over time feel like you're losing your independence as well. Like you're losing yourself because you know how things are going in your home country. And then you get to another country with a different set of rules, different expectations, different culture, different language, different all in all setting. And you have to relearn everything from scratch. You have to build everything from scratch. And there are so many situations, so many where you have to ask for help, especially your partner. If you don't feel capable, for example, doing those little things like making a doctor's appointment by yourself, you slowly become a shadow of yourself. And that's a feeling that really sucks. And it can drag you very, very, very deep. And it builds resentment towards your partner. What I did, and I know so many couples, individuals, women who moved abroad for their partners did the same, is that step by step, they've built their independency. They've learned, first of all, it's okay to ask for help. But it also comes with leaving your comfort zone, getting out there, doing small things like running errands by yourself, maybe having a conversation in the park, like we do have a dog now, and there's so many situations where I just walk her, and then you naturally get into conversation with another dog owner, and then you just try your best to speak the language you're just learning. It can be funny. In all the cases, people understood. I was able to make myself understood, even if I'm just like gesturing enough. Like, it's just your way of doing things. So eventually you will get into it. But it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of moving out of your comfort zone. And sometimes it's just very uncomfortable in general, depending on the situation you're facing. I highly encourage you, if you're facing a situation you feel like you can't do yourself, you can't master yourself, ask your partner or ask your network for support. Maybe you've made some friends already in case you've just moved abroad. Ask them for help. They are happy to help, and especially if you've built a network of friends already, they might even know how you're feeling in that very situation. If you feel helpless or embarrassed, it's okay to feel that way, because all feelings have their space. So all feelings are valid and they are needed for you to take the next step. And also sometimes you might think back to a situation and you're just like, I never want to feel that way again. So what can I do not to feel that way again? So it really encourages you as well to take the next steps. So what do you actually do when you feel like love might not be enough? Easier said than done. Build your own culture. It takes time. a lot of patience, but eventually you will get there. What I would like you to do is to think about that love brought you closer together, and eventually it's time to build a shared culture, like a third culture, which means that you are implementing each other's traditions, maybe having a silly new tradition, cooking each other's childhood meals. In our case, what helped a lot is that we had the privilege of experiencing both countries. So he moved to Germany and now I'm living in Argentina, and things like, weekly check-ins, really making sure that you're on the same page and thinking out of the box as well. Like, think about fun ways to make it interesting, fun ways to create this third culture. So what is it you always wanted to do? You thought it's silly, but you know that you have your partner in crime by your side, also willing to go along with you. So yes, love is beautiful, but it's not a fix-all. Again, to help you to navigate cultural differences, but also the topic of communication, you will find guideline on the topic of communication below for you and your partner to check in on each other regularly. Again, you don't have to print it out and fill it out, but they might just give you an idea on different conversation starters, and they might just be a nice reminder for you to sit down on a regular basis and make a fun date out of it. No matter where you are in your shared journey, please, please, please be kind to yourself. Take it one step after the other. There were so many times where I thought, okay, I have no idea what's next. I have no idea where we will end up, if we will even end up, wherever we will end up together. Time will just tell. Time and a lot of conversations, a lot of communication, a lot of tackling those heavy topics as well. At some point, yes, I loved wearing those sun-colored glasses back in the car when I picked up Nacho. What we have nowadays is just so profound. We can rely on each other 100,000% because we got to a point where we had all those heavy conversations already. We got to a point where we are super secure in our relationship, and I don't want to change that for the butterflies we had in the beginning, for the honeymoon phase. Obviously, it was beautiful. There was just so much love. There was so much passion. There's still a lot of love. There's still a lot of passion. It just feels different, and thinking about how far we've gotten, that's actually another tip I would like to give you. So kind of like a tip 6, thinking about how far we've gotten. I also like to reflect on it. I like to take some time by myself and really think about, hey, what happened the past few years? How proud I am, how far we've come, and how cool it is that we're just like reunited in Argentina with our new family member. We adopted a dog 4 months ago, enjoying life, enjoying a completely different setting here, being able to spend time with his family while I'm still managing to spend time with my family, even though it's just virtually. But I think we've created a pretty cool balance, and I know that you can do the same. Patience, communication, and tackling those heavy topics is so important. Please take care of yourself. Hope to see you next time. If you like what I'm doing, please subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else, rate the podcast with 5 stars. I put a lot of effort, a lot of love into what I'm doing. The third link, sorry for all the links today, but the third link you will find below is a link to some workshops I'm organizing with other experts, because over the past few years, I've been doing this since 4 years already, I've built a network which I would like to share with you, and sharing it by offering free workshops starting on the 31st of October. We'll talk about making friends abroad as an adult, and we will end the last workshop on the 7th of December with raising kids multilingual. If this is what you're looking for, so topic of communication, de-escalation disagreements, paperwork, make sure to check out the third link below. That's it for today. A lot of talking, sending kisses, besito, and to see you soon. Bye!